Ask the Podcast Coach for January 12th, 2019.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that fun-filled music that means it's Saturday morning, and you have arrived at the only podcast on the internet that answers your podcast questions live. Welcome to Ask the Podcast Coach. I'm your host, Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com. We are playing with a lot of new toys today. And joining me for the potential train wreck from Audio Editing Solutions, the one and only, and many other podcasts, which you will tell me about in a second, the one and only John Bukenas. Buddy, how's it going?
Not bad. It's nothing like a white knuckle podcast ride. It's fun to just jump in and just have at it.
You can join us at askthepodcastcoach.com/live. And what we're trying to figure out already is my screen backwards? Can you read the phone number, which is 330-294-9393? If you want to call in, you can actually just dial in. I'm trying something a little new. I'm using this morning the Rode Procaster Pro, and it's a great piece of equipment. And one of the things it does is you can Bluetooth in a phone number. And I was like, ooh, we could dial in a phone. And I was trying some things last night. I was using Magic Jack. That turned out to be a quite the train wreck. And just let's see. Then I was trying Google Voice. I actually have if you could see my desk right now. Oh, holy cow. But I actually got a TRR. So it's double R, TRRS to TRRS connector to plug the phone directly in. And that there's something amiss here because I actually went later and played Spotify through this, and it's doing some funky stereo to mono conversion that makes things sound really wacky. It really cut the audio volume down. So today we have the phone connected via Bluetooth. But Dave's checking the chat. So
someone wants to know where the video is, and the video is
askthepodcastcoach.com/live is where we are. So yeah, if you're listening on Mixlr, go over to askthepodcastcoach.com/live. And again, if you want to call in, again, that number is 330-294-9393. But John, we got a question out of the box from Jonathan Bloom, and it goes a little something. He said, hoping he's going to hit the right button like this.
Hey, Dave and Jim. I hope you're having a good morning. I was recently listening to one of the past episodes of Ask the Podcast Coach, and that was the one where Monica was filling in. And you and Dave, you and Ho were talking about asking questions that led to stories. And your example was asking her when she started podcasting, and then she said June of 2017. And then the other way you asked it, which led her to tell a story, was, when did you have the desire to start a podcast? And then she talked about getting a mic in 2013 and then ended up starting in June of 2017. So her story led to that. So I was wondering if you could discuss different types of questions you can ask or different ways to ask questions that leads your guests to tell stories, because I know people love it when you tell stories on the podcast. I'm Josh from thecornercutterpodcast.com, and my podcast is the Corner Cutter Podcast. It's all about speed cubing, which is solving the Rubik's Cube. And thanks for answering my question.
Thank you, Jonathan. John, did you ever play with a Rubik's Cube?
I've played with one. I've never solved one.
Yeah, I remember once I was talking with Jonathan, and he goes, yeah, my record's something, I'm just going to pull out a number. It was something like 1.7. And I thought it was like weeks or days. And it was like, no, seconds. Like
1.7 seconds?
I don't know what it was. Just
had to be a minute.
Whatever it was crazy. Yeah. When it comes to, I'm going to steer you to a really good answer that has nothing to do with me. And that guy's name is Eric K. Johnson. If you go over to podcasttalentcoach.com, he's got a PDF there that you can download, 17 questions for better interviews or things like that. But the big one is try to avoid yes/no questions. So if you say, I don't know, John, have you ever solved the Rubik's Cube? And John would say,
no.
But if I say, John, have you ever played with a Rubik's Cube? He might say.
Yeah, played with them all the time, frustrated through a bunch of them.
Yeah, so now I have a story.
Right.
So you want to avoid the yes no stuff. It's easier said than done. Interviews, a lot of people think, oh, I'll just do an interview and somebody will come on and they'll answer a bunch of questions. But to get a decent interview, it's a little crazy at times. So have we figured out if my video is backwards yet? Everybody's listening on Mixler today.
Well, the reason they're listening on Mixler is because the video is not working.
Oh, well, that would be good to know.
Well, how do you break that to your co-host as you're telling the story?
If you over in the Googles, what you call it, where we're at, the Hangout, there's an actual chat room that only you and I can see.
Okay, yes.
So I will run out to that. While I'm doing this, John, why don't you let the lovely people know where they can find you?
Well, I am the he editor of the She Podcast. So I am also on with Elsie and Jess. And then Emily Prokop and I do a podcast. It's called Hate the Weight, which is a podcast where we are trying to just lose weight. And it's not a how to lose weight. It's a support, because we all do different things. And to be honest with you, we're having a lot of fun over there. We have a Facebook group that you can come into, and it's a lot of support. So I do that. And then I also have the Brilliant Observations podcast with Jessica Kupperman and Melissa Brilliant, where the name comes from. So there are the podcasts that I have. I've been podcasting since 2012. I can't believe it's been that long, but so there you go. And look at you, Dave Jackson. You fixed the video in just that amount of time.
I know. I was like, okay. Hopefully it's worked. I just
in my mind, the guys, when they look at and they stretch, they make that stretch. Keep talking.
Yeah, do this. So well, we can do a mic shootout. If you're looking at the video, you're like, Dave, that's not your RE320, which is now in my hand. I'm using the Rode Procaster, and what I'm going to do is hold my RE320 so I have this pointed at the corner of my mouth, because there is no pop filter right now. I have this little pop filter, and I tried to put just this little windscreen, which is just connected to my RE320 with a little screw and a little bracket. And the Procaster is a little fatter. It's a little more, there's a little more Coke in the Coke can. And so what I'm going to do is turn up the RE320, and I'm going to, now they're both on, and now we're just listening to the RE320. And what I did beforehand was I made them both have the exact same settings in the Procaster. So again, this is the RE320, and this is the Procaster. So the Procaster definitely has a little more bottom end to it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I actually, in the Rodecaster Pro, I have the ability, if I want to come over and turn on an oral exciter, which I actually do, where if I did that, he said switching microphones again, if I did that over here with the RE320, it's a little harsh. So now the oral exciter on, and I mean, every popping, to me, that's like really, it's just, hey, let's listen to Dave mouth noises. So this is maybe one of those things where I'm going to go back to the Procaster. Maybe this is going to sound really cool when you use all Rode stuff. But I do like the sound of this microphone. It's really warm. It's a lot of bass to it. And it's one of those things, again, I don't know that, it's one of those sort of like, yep, I think it sounds as good. For me, I think the big magic of a microphone sometimes isn't really even what it sounds like to the audience. Although let's state the obvious here. It cannot sound like, two cans and some string. I think it's all in the person's head. If they like the way they sound, then they're good. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I guess whenever you hear yourself on a microphone, you never really like the way you sound, right? Because you're not used to hearing yourself. It takes a little while to get used to. But I guess for me, the hardest thing for me to listen to is somebody that is on a computer mic and they are sitting way back, and you hear all that room noise come rushing in, and it's very hard to hear them. And then once they record it, they don't bring it back in and try to remove some of that head noise and try to, compress and bring up that audio, so it's more listenable. They just don't know how. So you get what you get. You don't throw a fit.
And that's where you go, God bless Isotope and
Yeah.
their deverb tool. And that's, I think, my favorite thing out of the whole Isotope package is deverb. Because I played with I forget what the name of the company. They had some sort of anti-reverb kind of setting. And the Isotope is just so much better because you can actually say, like, if I'm in a big gymnasium, I can say, I think the echo is going to be much longer in this room. Whereas if I just have like slapback echo of like Elvis in the 50s, I could say, no, I think the echo is going to be shorter. And somehow that makes a huge difference. I've been playing with that a lot because I just interviewed somebody who was on their laptop microphone, which actually wasn't as horrible as I thought it was going to be. Luckily, her fan wasn't going off. I mean, it wasn't ideal, but we had a fair amount of background noise, and I was able to clean that up. So,
for me, the biggest thing with the RX6, or now it's RX7, is the mouthy click, because for some reason I have a very clicky mouth and I hear it now so much. So when I do that, I just look at the amount of clicks in an hour show. It's in the thousands. So I appreciate that.
absolutely. And I even brought back the old jingle. If you'd like to call in, because I have to use the crappy radio voice for this, it's 330-294-9393. And actually, as we say that, holy cow, in theory, we have a caller ending in 8450 ready to kick the tires on this bad boy. What's your name and what's your question for Dave and John?
Greetings. Happy Saturday morning to you, Dave.
I think I recognize
Jim.
that voice.
Yeah, I recognize that voice too.
And now we have to remember to tell people, turn off your speakers, because then there's going to be this weird, echo thing. So
Am I echoing now?
no, you're fine. You sound like you're on the phone.
Okay. Goodbye for now.
Okay. Hopefully.
Yeah. No, I'm calling in through Google Hangout. So seeing it. Well, I mean,
I'm not quite sure how to help you.
hold
with
on.
that.
the woman in the
I'm
tube.
sorry. The woman in the tube is talking while I'm talking. Yeah. No. You Gmail. They've got a. You can call people on Gmail. So I thought, well, you put the number out there, and thought I'd call in and see how it works.
Yeah, we're going back to the old days, which is funny because kicking this thing off is, again, remember the guy who always used to say, your web conference or whatever it was. So I was like, oh, I remember this weird guy, the robot man from collinstudio.com. But because this thing ties in so easily with a phone, I was like, well, let's throw this up here and see if it works. So, so far it does, I guess. How does it sound on your end?
Well, it's pretty modulated. I mean, it's pretty kind of like we're getting just a little too much to the phone. I mean, it's understandable, but
Okay.
it's not the clearest. You wouldn't listen long term this way, but it's good enough to be able to hear what you're saying. How about me? How's the audio quality coming out of the phone line?
You sound like you're on the phone, in my opinion. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I mean, it's a basic cell phone call. Are you on a cell phone or are you on a landline?
Nope. I'm on a landline. I'm actually coming through the studio setup. So the ATR 2100, and just like I would, it's just going through Gmail.
Yeah, it does sound just like a phone call that you would hear on a radio station.
Yeah.
That's the audio quality.
It must go analog at some point.
Yeah.
It must get fed through an analog line here at some point. Dave, by the way, your the video is still not showing on the live page.
What's it
just
say?
So you know,
it's
just the unavailable. The video is unavailable. When you click on play, it just says video is unavailable. So we've been shuffling everybody over to Mixler. That's why everybody's over there. You can have great Mixler stats today.
Well, that's weird. Because I mean, that's.
I want to see this new TV that's in the background. Like you teased me with it last night with a video.
If you go to askthepodcastcoach.com/live show.
Yeah,
that is the page. And when I go there and click on play, if you go to ask the pod, I'm listening to you. I mean, I just was me saying, if you go to the page, there's like a 3-second delay.
Are you sure you have that set to public and not and not private?
Then I can't fix that. I can't fix that in the middle of
No, you can. You could go on. You could go on the fly. Just go in there and change that over to. If you go into the video settings, you've got public, unlisted, and private.
Okay.
And you might just have it set to private. If you flip that over, then it's pretty common. You had a lot, as I was watching you get set up for this thing this morning, you had a lot of bells and whistles and gadgets and new things you're trying. And I know the screen was flickering. So
I don't know if there's anything I can really do about that, because it's one of those things where, hey, I bought this cheap thing. Yeah, it is. It's set to private. There we go.
There you go. Just flip that over to public. Let's validate that here while you're doing it. Okay, we're seeing it now. Okay. So I'll let the chat room know that the video is working on the live page now.
The joys.
That's my job, right? I'm the tech guy. I have to make sure.
Yes. But yeah, that was the thing. It was as I was putting all this stuff together, there was a voice in my head that says, "Remember when you used to do this?" And it was, we finally just said, "Let's make it easy." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's maybe I've gone too far." This way.
No, what do you hear, Dave? So when I was calling in, I get a voicemail. So I called in. I get a voicemail from you that says, "Hey, you're almost there. Just hang tight, and you'll hear a beep when you're live." Right, and all that stuff worked great. Actually, the call-in experience is awesome. I'm assuming at this point you can only take one at a time. Is that right?
I can go over and see that right now you are the only person I can only do one person, because really all this is I've tied my cell phone into callinstudio.com, and it's the thing where I can mute you, I can drop you, I can, that whole 9 yards. So I've got the queue going. And the reason for that is last night I was on Facebook, and I don't expect this to happen because it never happened in the past. But if I have more than one caller, last night I was on Facebook, and I just threw the number out. I'm like, "Hey, everybody call this." Well, then I got like 3 calls at once. So we never really had that problem in the past, but I thought, well, it's not that expensive. It's like $6 a month and then 6 cents a minute, I think, for the caller. So I'm like, let me try Call-In Studio here. And then because I had problems with Magic Jack, and it's a long story with my Google Voice number, I tried to get a second one, and it was just like, never mind. I'm like, screw it. I'm going to callinstudio.com. So that's what I'm using now, because it just seemed.
Well,
go ahead.
From a caller-in experience, it's actually pretty easy. I dialed the number. I got your voicemail. You instructed me to just wait till you heard the beep. Then there's a beep, and I'm in, and you announced me in. So that part is working. Works pretty well. Audio coming back is great. You got to make sure you shut off your, I closed everything I was listening to, so I didn't get that, can you turn off the radio thing that goes on. When you get the call from me, when I called in, what was the experience, and how do you set me live? How did that work?
I just go into, it's a website, and I can see, if you remember back in the day when I used to say ending in, 8596, what's your name and because I can't see. If I wanted to, we could get a call screener and they could go in and add, some stuff like that. But so I can't see who's really calling. I can just see your phone number. Yeah. So, but
it was pretty easy. I mean, you got me in here, so that part was pretty easy, right?
Yeah. That it's just a matter of, I've got, again, I'm going to be a little, I have to kind of watch the phone line and the chat room. So most of the time that means, especially with this, usually I'm looking at you, so in this case, I'm looking at John. So I'm kind of watching what you guys do. So it's a few more things to watch. And what I'm going to try to do, I just didn't want to do it today. There were too many new things in the pike, is I was going to use Call-In Studio on my iPad and see if I could actually take calls and go that route. So I'll test that later, because then I could have a third screen going here, and I could have you on one screen, the chat room on the other, and just go that route. So I think that's how we'll do that. And again, it may be a case that nobody wants to call in. Everybody just wants to ask their question in the chat room. But I'm like, it's an audio program. Let's make it even easier. So
when I talk, what does it? What screen is it showing? You just staring at the screen while I talk, or what's the? Yes. Is there something that pops up? Is that what happens?
No, I guess I could always. if I wanted to make things even more complicated, I could run OBS, right? And because I can't show, like, if I wanted to show, well, number one, I don't want to show your number, and then right beneath your number is my cell phone number. So we're never going to show the call-in studio line. So yeah, it's just me looking down at the screen. It's a awesome visual of like, what is Dave looking at? So I need to look at the camera, and maybe I'll have a sign that says, 330, and you can be where Jim is. Just dial 330-294-9393. So yeah.
You were asking earlier if your video is backwards, and it is indeed.
It is indeed backwards.
Out here, it is backwards.
Well, we can fix that really quick. For some reason, when I did that, originally it looked kind of weird. So you should see that fix
there
here.
It goes. It just flipped over.
Yeah. So
you went to another camera.
For me in Google Hangouts, or whatever this is, it's backwards. So
and there I am.
So
the with the TV, you and I talked a little bit about one of the challenges of the TV setup there that you got going. Of course, is it introduces glare, right?
Yeah,
so now.
Yeah, people are mentioning they're like, "Hey, Dave, there's a big glare on the left-hand side," and that's a thing called my window that I will need to buy. I mean, you can. Well, here I'll just do this. For those of you listening to the audio, I've got they're just blinds. They're white blinds, and they're somewhat open. I mean, I could run over there and try to close them, but trust me, I'm going to get, glare from that side. So I've actually got black curtains. I just, again, a handy thing that I have not done. So that would definitely, because it looked great. Well, I don't know if it looked great. It looked better last night because it was dark. So. That dark,
again, you have to shake.
Yeah. Well, John,
there's some anti-glare film you can get. That, I mean, if you really want to eliminate the glare, those helps. You can also tilt it, right? So you could tilt it down a little bit.
Yeah.
I know you've got it on a stand, right? You were stressing out a little bit about getting that thing mounted, and so you bought a stand to put it on. I'm still assuming it's a Visa mount, right? That's the kind of mount that goes onto the back of the stand, and then you should be able to tilt that a little bit just to kind of take, that's the old photographer's trick with glasses, is tilt the glasses a little bit.
Yeah.
It looks kind of stupid, but you can remove the glare that sometimes that way. One of the drawbacks
glare on the right side.
Well, one of the drawbacks to using this kind of equipment, is we've talked about this before. One, the TV has to be almost because of these C920s and their sensors are so small. You have to almost have that thing as dark as you can't even see it, right? And you got it pretty dark back there. Otherwise, it will take over the light and your face will be dark.
Yeah.
And so you really got to turn those things down. You had a little bit of flicker in it. I think I saw a video on Facebook where it looked like you'd gotten the flicker out. And so I was like, oh, I don't know. It does. Maybe you can ask the audience who's watching it. I'm not watching you live because I don't want the echo, but. Is it flickering, John? Do you see his monitor flickering on your monitor?
No, not at all.
That's cool.
It looks good.
Okay. Because on mine, it's ever so slight, so that's good. Because there's a setting in what I was using, and it said, "Hey, here, click here for the anti-flicker option." I was like, "That's what we need," because it was pretty bad last night. So, but awesome.
Then, Dave, are you using a PC to run that? Is that what you've got another
I've
PC
actually
back there, or how are you running?
Kind of cool about the stand, if I get out of my own way. Is I've got a little stand here for a laptop. So Mixler is on that little stand, as is just a PowerPoint presentation that is running through here in the background. And it's not only shows the phone number, but it shows some of our awesome supporters, even though obviously my head is in the way. But that's what's going on back there. So that way, if somebody's watching, they can call in. And I've got it right now set up to, well, what if somebody calls in later to 330-294-9393? Well, then they'll get my voice number. So, which we can then play like Jonathan did later in a future episode. So we'll see. It's just one of those things where I'm like, let's throw it on the wall and see what happens. So.
No, super cool. It just adds another element of complexity to it. Hey, why don't you, so other people can jump on the phone, why don't you jump, I'll jump off so other folks can jump and call in. if you want to send me the inside thing on Slack, I am home today.
Oh.
I think you thought I was going to be out. But shoot me the inside join thing, and I'll jump in.
Come
and
on
hang out
over.
with you, John. Okay.
Come on
Yeah,
down.
100%. All right, I'm going to jump off so others can jump in. Actually, the call-in experience is super easy. So if you want to, you're out there listening live and you want to call in with a question, get that number and we'll put it in the chat room as well, so that you can. I'll throw it in the chat room. So you can call in. All right, I'm going to jump off. We'll see you on the other side.
There you go. The one and only Jim Collison from the averageguy.tv. So, and we were talking about this earlier, how it's kind of weird to jump into something. We always try to be as prepared as we can be, but it's hard. You know what? John, you live alone. I live alone. There is something. Can you think of anything else that you go, oh crap, this is going to be hard by myself? I can tell you one thing that's hard to do by yourself. Get a large screen TV out of a box, because you need somebody to hold it. And while you pull it out, and it was like, okay, how am I ever going to get this? What I did was I got it halfway out, which is great because I'm pulling it out by the plastic bag. And I'm like, this is dumb. I have this, and it says all over it, this is delicate. I'm like, and I'm trying to get it out. And I finally, when it got about a quarter of the way out, wedged the box under the arm of a chair and then put my foot on the chair so the chair wouldn't move. I was like, I need to invent some sort of thing here so people that live alone can pull things out of boxes.
I bought these fold-up tables, and I use them down here in the studio. I bought 3 of them, and I said, I'll just have them delivered. That, because it's just as easy to buy them online and just have them delivered. So they put them in the backyard, so that was great. I had to get them in the house by myself. So then I had to go up the steps, and then it makes a turn and goes up the steps. And I got the thing halfway up, and felt like Ross from Friends. I'm all pivot, but I'm the only person there. And I got that thing wedged in the stairs, between the 2 stairs. I had to leave, call somebody, and I say, listen, come over here. Help me get this thing unjammed out of the steps. So yeah, there are certain times when you're by yourself and you're like, boy, it would really be nice to have another set of hands here.
When I bought a treadmill because I needed one, for lack of a better phrase. And the guy from Dick's Sporting Goods brings it out to my car, and both of us put it in the car. And already in my head, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to get this out of my car alone. So luckily, I just got so lucky that I had my brother's van, and I backed up to where the back of the van was right at the sidewalk. And many, many moons ago, there was a infomercial for a thing called the Total Trolley, which which was kind of a 2-wheeler, or you could put it down and had 4 wheels, or you could use it as a step ladder. And I'm like, oh, it's Total Trolley time. And that thing came through. It's one of those things. It's a stupid infomercial thing, but it was one of those buy one, get one free. We'll throw in a second Total Trolley for free, and Ginsu. No, there were no Ginsu knives, but I gave one to my brother, and he's always like, man, we totally put the trolley to the test today. So if you ever get a chance to buy one, I highly recommend. I'm not getting paid for this, but luckily I was able to throw it on, roll it down the sidewalk, and then the Total Trolley is probably 7 inches tall. And I was able to open my door and just push it into the living room. So I got very, very lucky, because there was a thing. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to pick this up without completely wrecking my body. So
you got a better workout getting
exactly. I burned a few calories getting that
in and set up. Yeah, absolutely. What do you think? I mean, as a podcaster, sometimes you just have to fly without a net. You have to try things. You have to crash and burn. You don't always have to put it out.
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah, you don't always have to put it out. You can always crash and burn. I think the biggest embarrassment I ever did one time was I had a podcast, and we were singing. We did a karaoke thing, and I was doing an AC/DC part, and I forgot that I had a mix minus, and I didn't send it to Facebook. So I am doing my worst AC/DC a cappella
with no music.
And then I listened back to it, and I was horrified. I couldn't get the video off of Facebook fast enough. But there was 30 people in the room watching me do the karaoke AC/DC a cappella. Horrible. And I was uncomfortable for about, I'm not going to lie, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But after that, I was like, oh, well, what are you going to do? These are things you do, and this is how you learn. So I would say, just don't be afraid to fail publicly. It's not that big of a deal. It's not fatal. They won't kill you.
Nobody's going to punch you.
No one's going to punch you in the face. That's true. But I think a lot of times we're afraid to do something because we're afraid to embarrass ourselves or look stupid. And I feel that I've actually achieved looking stupid, and I kind of make it look good sometimes. It does teach you how to, almost talk your way out of it, where you're saying, okay, well, this is backwards, and we're going to straighten this out. And look, in just this a little bit of a amount of time we've been on here, you've straightened out the video, you got the audio working, and now you're good to go. New mic, all that stuff,
all the fun stuff with all the trimmings. And speaking of that, it's going to go away. There is apparently Jim Harold. I was up at Jim's house, a fellow Clevelander. Jim got his Rodecaster. I got to remember what the name of this thing is. The Rode. There's too many pros in it. It is. You grab the placemat. Look at this. This thing seriously came with like placemats. Rodecaster Pro. I always want to call it the Procaster Rode, and it's like but so if like when it's time for your kids to eat like SpaghettiOs, you're like, here, put this under your plate. We're good to go.
Don't mess up the table.
But there must be a Windows ever so slight every now and then completely unpredictable issue with maybe the driver, because as we're talking, there's a little bit of a buzz slowly sneaking into the recording. And Jim, you'll be glad to know that after about a minute and a half, even though John told me to don't forget to press record, I still forgot to press record because I was pressing 18 other.
You had a lot of things going on, Dave. You had a busy morning.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to temporarily choose a different input. So I sound really crappy now. And now I'm back. And I think, Jim, if you say something now.
I'm going to say something right now.
Okay. You're a little weird. So I'm going to change this output to something. And now the output back to the Rodecaster Pro. And now if you say something, Jim.
I can say something. You just call me weird.
Yeah. And no. And what's weird is the weirdness is not going away. I did this earlier today and it cleaned it right up. And I was like, oh, I just need to temporarily switch to something. And it went away because I was like, oh, I can't have that during the.
Do you think buzzes as a driver though? I don't usually find buzzing to be a driver issue as much as I do a cable issue.
You know what? I bet it might be. Let's do this. Maybe I need to change it here in Google Hangouts.
Oh, now you got really weird.
Yeah, now I got really weird, and now I should come back. And if you say something,
I can say something.
Okay, that's weird. So I'm going to again temporarily change you to something else in the speakers, and now go back to the communications Rodecaster Pro. Oh, you know what? I'm not saving my changes. I bet that now if you say something,
I can say something again.
Oh, yeah, you're even worse. That's even better.
But he sounds good here.
Yeah, this is some great podcasting now.
Right, you sound bad.
We're talking.
Jim sounds great.
Well, and same for you, John. Let's just cut Dave out of the equation, and maybe you and I can do the podcast.
There you go. Now you're back to normal. So
you're not though. You're not.
You sound like you're on the mic for the camera.
Yeah,
okay, we can fix that.
Let's switch you over.
But that did. Yeah, I was on the webcam.
There we go.
Okay, now we're back. So hopefully that won't come back till the end of the show. But speaking of the end of the show, that's not a transition at all. But one of the things I do want to talk about, and the fun thing of this. Except I'm missing it. If we go here, I got smart. This is instead of trying to run PowerPoint, I exported the PowerPoint as a PowerPoint show. So I don't have to worry about sharing my screen and switching for this. This is just a thing I click on now. And we want to thank our awesome supporters over at AskThePodcastCoach.com/awesome. And people like Josh Liston, which you can find it on the Bubble podcast.com. Greg over at Debt Shepherd, where he teaches financial wellness. Jonathan Bloom, who we heard from earlier. No, that wasn't Jonathan. That was another. What's with everybody named with a J today? But Jonathan Bloom over at weeklyawesome.com. Glenn the Geek over at horseradionetwork.com. Josh Rivers, another person with a J in his name, podcastingexperiments.com. Matt Trescott, see, my mouth is leaving. Max Trescott over at aviationnewstalk.com. Shane from spybrary.com, who, by the way, is just a super nice guy. Carrie Bond over at keywestperspective.com/podcast, and my buddy from down under, Ronsley over at mustamplify.com. It's a podcast media group, for lack of a better phrase. He does all things podcasting down under. And if you'd like to be an awesome supporter, simply go over to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. And now we can, and of course, even that didn't work. Nothing's working today because half the reason I did the whole Logie thing is the fact that it would do a nice transition, and it didn't. So anyway.
Wasn't bad. Wasn't a bad transition.
It wasn't? Okay. Because on my end, it was just like, there was no fade in.
It was click, but it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to.
Again,
it was pretty nice.
Well, I'm glad speaking of that, things that people obsess over that they shouldn't. I have one that I wanted to share. We've talked about your episode numbers and how sometimes people, do we have them? Where do we put them and things like that? Here was a question, and I think I know the answer to this. I had somebody this week that had multiple episodes. They've been doing this a while. And there was one episode, for whatever reason, they were going to pull it down. So they're like, this one, I don't know if there wasn't maybe something that was in it didn't make sense anymore, but they're just going to pull the whole thing down. And they asked me, should I renumber all my episodes? What say you? I think Jim has got my answer. John, what do you think?
Wow. I mean, if I'm 25, I might think about it, but if I'm you, there's no way I'm renumbering all the episodes.
Yeah,
there's no way.
Yeah, it kind of inspired my last episode, which was here are some time wasters that podcasters are doing, and I was like, this is one where, like you said, if it was 5 episodes, maybe, because that's going to take all of 10 minutes, but I think they had like 99 plus. And I was like, I said, you can. I said, but I don't know. I guess I just don't. I know some people love their episode numbers and it makes it easy to find things. So if I say, go out to, askthepodcastcoach.com/ whatever this is, 239 or something like that, it's easy to find. But that was the other thing is you would be renumbering things that were probably from months ago, which probably don't get a huge amount of traffic. So I was just like, yeah, we're going to chalk that up to one of those things that people kind of.
Dave, I think the question is, why do you number? Like, it's not to have an accurate count. It's so people can find them, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, if say you're on 300 episodes and you delete 57, 59, and 63, nobody cares. Like, nobody's going to, well, you might get one person. But nobody's going to go back looking for those. I'm like, hey, you skipped 59, John. How come, where's 59? I want 59 right now. That's public record. No, nobody cares, right? So, I think that is a gigantic, I think that's a gigantic, I'll be honest, even if I'm at 25 and I remove one, I'm not going to go back and number them. One, I save our episode numbers in the show. All the show notes have that embedded in it. And it just doesn't, that just doesn't make any sense. So no, I don't think I wouldn't recommend you go back and change. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you have pretty links and you use a pretty link and then you change the number, now you're changing all your pretty links to, it's going to go to another number. So now you're really screwed. So sometimes you get in the middle of something and you're like, oh, I should have never started this because now I have a mess. And now how do I get out of this?
Yeah.
So I would say, yes, maybe I'm with Jim. You can change my mind in 15 minutes if you have a good argument. You can change my mind. Now I'm with Jim. Yes, never change. I could change. And
maybe not never, but I think you really got to think through, like, why am I doing what I'm doing? And if I do remove them, it would be a good idea to put something in there to redirect it somewhere else so they don't get a broken link. That would be, if you're just going to delete the post, you might want to redirect that post when you go in there and delete it so that they kind of know what to do. That's if you're going down that route. Hey, if your system is different and you need to renumber, just renumber. Like, that's the beauty of podcasting. You do whatever you want. But I wouldn't. I mean, for me, if somebody was asking, I would be like, oh gosh, that's a lot of work. I did go back at episode 100. I renamed some things. And I had to go back and change a whole bunch of links and a whole bunch of meta, and you have to kind of, it's like unwinding a lie. You got to remember where you said everything.
It is unwinding a lie, isn't it? Yes. I would have never thought to go back and even go back and change the links, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah. Well, you'd be surprised at what we embed in our show notes, and so it needs a lot of consideration before you just go do it.
I had a client come to me just last week, and she said, "Oh my God, I said something on the show, and my family's in an uproar, and we have to take it down immediately." So I was like, "Okay, well, I can take that down." So then she started thinking about all the things she said on other episodes. And now she's like, I think I'm pulling the whole show down. I'm like, whoa, hold on, stop. Whoa, hold on a second. Let's breathe. And I finally talked her out and I said, you have over 60 episodes. I dare them to go back and listen to all 60. No one has that kind of time. So I think you're going to be okay. And so she ate a lot of crow, and we took the stuff out of the episode and put it back up again. But I could see where, if you get yourself in trouble and someone does go back and listen, where you have to pull one down. But I don't know what I would do with that.
We had an episode last week where the guest, so I produced everything and was ready to publish it. And he sends me a note and says, hey, I was showing something on my phone and it had my home address and we need to blur that out. It was done. I mean, I was like, oh, serious? So there's some blurring capabilities on YouTube where you can go in and you can set it to blur. It's not as easy as it sounds, by the way, and it takes hours to re-render.
Yeah.
And so as I was figuring out, much like Dave, you're figuring out all the fancy tools this morning, I was figuring out this new blurring tool on YouTube. And I had to do it 3 times, and it would take 3 or 4 hours to render each time I would do it. And so I did it. I'd pull it down. I'd watch it, and it wasn't right. And it would still be there. I'm like, so I didn't publish. Normally I publish Friday night or Saturday morning, and I didn't publish till Sunday at like 6 or 7 in the evening. I had people sending me notes like, hey, where's the podcast?
That's good.
That's a good problem to have.
Yeah, but it is one of those things, when you talk about having to take things out of it, John, right? When they say, oh, I said something, if you're fast in your video or audio production and you're getting those things out quickly, chances are they're going to catch it after you've published it, and then you've got to go in and do all the things to pull it out.
Yeah, well, Aunt May or Aunt Susie called and was in an uproar about something she said about the family, and then someone else was in an uproar. So it got to be such a family thing. She's like, I got to get this down. So we took it down. I edited about 6 or 7 minutes of it out and put it back up again.
Yeah, I've gone that route.
Have you had a family issue, Dave, before?
Yeah, I've had the ex-wife number 2 was like, and I'm like, well, I said, hold on, remember, this isn't necessarily the truth. It's my side of the story. I go, not that I'm lying, but that is my side of the story. And she said, well, Mom, and she was like, well, people are going to hear this. I go, nobody's listening to the show. Nobody listens to Building a Better Dave. I'm like, well, what if my coworkers here? I go, you are known as the nurse. I've never used your name. I said, and I was like, but she was
pre or post Xness.
This was pre-Xness.
Pre-Xness.
Okay. So if you look at the numbers or the dates of Building a Better Dave, you'll see it was fairly constant. I get married, things are cool, and then I just go like air silence for a long time because it had to go through the nurse filter, which meant I couldn't talk about anything in my life, because even it was me, unless it's me, like, what's up with these, peanuts, it's if I'm doing a Seinfeld episode, it's great. But otherwise, if it was anything that was going on in my life, it's like, well, no, but what people? I'm like, and I just like, would you please quit listening to my show? Don't. You're not allowed to listen. Stop it. So
what happened? She was listening.
Yeah. So what happened in the beginning? It was you building a better Dave. Then she started building a better Dave.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, dude,
she started editing a better Dave.
Yeah, that was it.
John, do you in your editing work that you do you run into that besides that incident? Is that common that you have to pull those? Do people ask you often to pull those not necessarily just family, but those kinds of things where for content reasons they pull it out?
Not really. That only a handful of times has that happened. And usually it's like, hey, we have to go back to 4 episodes ago because now people are starting to listen to it. And I go in because I usually upload the file, and I go in and I look, and the downloads are like 1,500 downloads. I'm like, well, 1,500 people already heard this. So who's really going to hear? I mean, the damage is done. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. The damage is done. It's out there. There's nothing you can do about it.
I have had people contact me at Libsyn, and they'll like, hey, if I move this, first they'll say, what should I do? Delete it or mark it as draft? And I'm like, well, if you delete it and you don't have a copy of it, it's gone to you. You're not going to get it back from Libsyn. So I said, if you want to keep it just for potential, but not have it public, you can mark it as draft. But I'm always like, the internet writes in ink. So number one, now you got to get a hold of Spotify, or in our case, have us get a hold of Spotify and say, hey, go in. Yeah, because Spotify makes a copy of it, and then so does Google Play Music, and that's the fun one. Have fun getting a hold of somebody at Google Play Music to say, we need that episode to be removed. So that's
what you're saying now is the copy that she was so upset about is still out there on Spotify and Google Play. Yeah. I didn't hear this.
If they're
never heard this thing.
Yeah, if they're on those platforms, and I think iHeartRadio too, because it's a hassle. Because it used to be. It used to be if you let's say, I don't know, in the middle of this, let's say I want to take out the whole robot discussion out of the show, which I probably will. And I like, oh, hold on, I got to fix that. In the past, I could just upload the exact same file name because your RSS feed says, hey, the file is here. Okay, great. Well, so you would upload this new version of the file, but it had the same file name, and somebody would go to their app, they'd click play and say, oh, it's over here. And they'd get the new version. Now, anybody that downloaded the old version, they got to delete it and re-download it. But that's the way it worked. Well, now Spotify makes a copy. So you upload the new version and Spotify goes, well, that's not new. That's the exact same file. I don't need to update anything. Okay. So now what happens is if you want it to update everywhere, you've got to upload with a new file name. So now it's my file name too. Spotify and Google Play and iHeartRadio go, hey, that's new. Let's get that copy. The bad news is now all the other apps like Apple Podcasts still in their RSS feed says, hey, it's pointing at the old URL of the file. So it doesn't work for up to 24 hours. Now your subscribers in theory will get it almost immediately. And again, they're not going to re-download it. I don't think. I'd have to double check that. But the whole thing on and people think that the Apple listing, like when you go to iTunes or that weird web-based version of iTunes, that's not going to work for about 24 hours until they rescan your show, update your RSS feed. So that's where I'm like, when Pandora came out, and I was like, please don't make a copy of the file because it just, I'll give you an example. I forgot a couple people in my favorite podcast is episode that I do at the end of the year. I updated it. I updated the file. I did not change the file name. And if you go to Spotify, along with the other 8 people that listen to the show on Spotify, you'll hear the old version. And I'm like, I'm not going, maybe later after it's been out a month, I might put out a new file name so it updates everywhere. But that way I'm not having people who are hitting my show like in its heyday, for lack of a better phrase. So it's kind of weird.
But you really did go in and update the 2 that you missed, Fred, and I forget who else it was. You added them to the show behind it, but you also went back in and updated the original so that they were in there?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So I did that. I said update the because every time somebody says that, I'm like, oh, you know what I mean? Because I'm like, not only do I'm going to play it here, but I go back and update the original and they update the PDF. And it was like, all of them were like, somebody sent me a zip file. That's how I missed the last one.
It would almost be nice if you could time that where your RSS feed goes out and the other ones that keep it permanently don't get it for 3 days or something. So that gives you that buffer kind of a fight, because you probably found out pretty quick that like Fred probably let you know pretty quick that you had forgotten them in the original, right? So because you're right, once it's out there, it's permanent. John, you were going to say something.
Well, what happened was the person that I got in trouble with me, she immediately went in and took down the episode. She deleted the episode. So when I went in and edited it, and it took the piece out and put the new show back in, I had to make a whole new post. So at that point, then I guess I'm okay with Spotify and all the other ones because they will see it's a new post.
Yeah. Yeah, I would get a new GUID, right, in all
Right.
those systems.
And then that would the other one wouldn't be there. So okay, so that's okay. I've seen before where it almost forces a new download to all your subscribers.
Yeah,
that's
if you
probably
add
the right
a brand
way.
new episode, it will definitely,
Okay, so then there's no other.
That's probably the right way to do it. Don't you think? If it's going to be that bad for those systems that don't replace it, it's probably smart to bring the whole thing down, delete everything, create a new post. Yeah, that's probably the right
what
way
I
to
do
do it.
in some cases that I'll have the title name and I'll put like in parentheses repost. Because that way if somebody goes, hey, I've already heard this, and I'm like, oh, repost, I'm like, oh, there must have been an issue.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the average non-podcaster thinks when they see that, but I'm like,
well, you can guarantee, and John, you know this in the business you do, that you can guarantee, even though you think you're doing it right, there's always going to be someone who thinks it was done wrong. And, you get 99% of the people who say, oh, no, that's fine. It's not a big deal. And it's not a big deal. But you get that one person who is like, no, this is the most awful thing you've ever done. I can't believe you're so insensitive. And so you can't, that's the hard part, is weighing. Like sometimes, Dave, I probably, in your shoes, I probably would not have gone back and added those two. You did. The newspaper doesn't go back and try and do a reprint of the newspaper from that day. When the Omaha World Herald makes a mistake, they just post a retraction in the next episode or in the next issue. And so I think I thought it was great. You added those to the next episode of School of Podcasting. And so I think that's above and beyond. I mean, it's great that you did it. I'm not sure I would have done it, but it's because that's a lot of work. You got to go back, pull it down. Yeah. It's all, yeah.
But it was, and Fred took it personal. He was like, I thought we were friends, man. I'm like, dude, why?
Yeah, I made a mistake. Like, it's a mistake.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm so sorry, but yeah. So, but I'm dying to try this. So we're going to give this a shot. If I do this.
Ooh, there you go. That was nice.
There's a question in the chat room. How do you store episodes? I'm at 120 gigabytes with 67 episodes. Do you keep only the mixed down version, or do you keep the raw WAV file? What do you guys do with those?
John?
I make a copy of the raw wave and the MP3, and then I get rid of that for everything that's 90 days or older. I have a 4 terabyte drive here, and it's 3/4 of the way full. So I also tell my clients that I keep all audio for 90 days, unless you want it. I'll give it all to you. You store it. But 90 days, and that is it. So, because that is, storage space is huge when you're working with this, and video is even worse.
Yeah.
So
I used to export to a WAV file. And now what I do, and I realize I'm leaving the door here for a problem. I keep like the Hindenburg file, and I have all the files that I used. So I have all the raw material. So if I ever need a WAV file of that, I can open up Hindenburg and go export WAV file. And because I used to export everything as a WAV file and throw it on Dropbox. And I'm like, well, as long as I have Hindenburg, and that's the asterisk, I can always go back and export whatever I need. So the problem is, if for some reason Hindenburg ever goes away, I'm screwed, and I better go back, and before it gets to a position where it doesn't work with Windows, I need to go back and export everything as a WAV file, which I could do. But I guess I could, in theory, just export as a WAV file and throw it someplace. But what about you, Jim?
So I pulled the MP4 down from YouTube, stripped the audio off using Audacity, and just actually create whatever that raw version is. I keep that. I keep the live raw file from YouTube as well. I've had YouTube delete my account, by the way, with no warning. So everybody's like, well, why don't you just keep your raw YouTube files? You can always get them. No, you can't always get them when YouTube deletes that account. I still can't figure out why they deleted that account. They just, one day, it was just gone. So I keep raw. So that's a pretty big file, right? So a raw video, raw audio, and then all the different mix versions that I make of it. So when I go in, I get an MP3 out of it. We have a post-show MP3. I create a video file that's the edited version that then goes to YouTube, but then I crunch that down to a large I have a video RSS feed, which last week did 800 downloads. It's unbelievable. Yeah, exactly. I went back and looked at my numbers, typically 300 or 400. And I always think, well, that can't be true. And then last week the show that we did got 800. And I thought, who the heck is downloading? And it's about a 900 meg file that's video and audio together, right? That they can download. And so about 9 times larger or 10 times larger than what an audio file would be for it. But they want it. Like they want it. So anyway, so a video large, a video small, and I keep all of them. And then I have this really cool box called a Moro Data, Morro, Moro Data. It has 1 terabyte of cached storage locally. So it keeps up to 1 terabyte of everything I have in the house. And then anything over that, based on how old the file is and how much I use it, it pushes it to Backblaze. So the files I don't use, the older ones, automatically get backed up. Everything gets backed up to Backblaze, but it automatically goes to Backblaze and I don't keep it locally. So if I need it, if I'm using it, like audio files that I'm, my intros, my exits, those kinds of things, they're always kept local. And then anything I don't use goes to Backblaze, and it's just a little placeholder in the file. And if I need it, it pulls it down on demand, which is kind of cool. It's a really, really cool box for storage. I think I have maybe 3 terabytes of cloud storage for everything I do. So even keeping all of those things, now I don't have customers. So John, you've got a bunch of customers, so that's exponential. That works out really well for me. So that's kind of that's the way I do it, Dave. Sorry for the long answer.
No. Have you seen in the chat room where I called you a chatty Cathy?
Sorry. You asked.
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so let's see. I'm still playing with things behind the scenes. If anybody wants to see, I will describe what's on the screen. I'm playing with this is what the new version of Boss Jock Studio looks like. It's called Backpack Studio now, because it was dawning on me. Here's the one thing that I'm missing from the jingle palette on the Rode. See, I still can't remember the name of this thing. The Rodecaster Pro. There we go. The Rodecaster Pro I have no idea how long the jingle is. Where with the other thing I was using, I had a countdown timer, so I could kind of go, because this is live. And with this, I don't know. I mean, if I were to hit this now and play this, okay, in theory, nothing's happening. Oh, I love the joy of live. I just downloaded this from Dropbox. Well, we can pretend we're at a basketball game. Oh, I'm not getting any volume from this now. Oh, because I guess I'm on the phone. See, these are the things you learn as you do things live. Yeah, because that should be playing and it's not. All right, so we've learned that you can't be on the phone and play sound effects, which I guess now that comes out of my voice, like my head,
kind of makes sense.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. That it wouldn't let me be playing jingles while I'm on the phone. But yeah, that's the fun thing. If I go now to start the music, because we are about out of time, we're going to stick around for some post show. I have no idea. I know this is 2 minutes and 11 seconds long, so I can bring the music up, but this is where I go, oh yeah, I have no idea how long this is, and it's going to be a train wreck, which will be great fun. I mean, I can start the stopwatch and go, okay, now I know I've got about 2 minutes to talk about it. And I can say, Jim, what's coming up on the AverageGuy.tv?
Yeah, we're back to kind of a general show of talking about a bunch of tech. I got a new Apple Watch and a new Xbox that's sitting right there. So the AverageGuy.tv, if you want to catch up.
And John, where can people want you to edit their stuff? Where can they go for that?
AudioEditingSolutions.com. Be happy to help you out in any podcasting needs you have.
And then while we're at it, feel free to plug your websites.
I just did.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you wanted to plug Hate to Wait.
No, well, I just did that earlier for the podcast, but no, I'm good.
On the School of Podcasting this week, you'll hear more, but different. Like you'll hear me talk about the train wreck that was today, but you also hear me and Jim Harold. We did a review of this, how he's using it. You'll also hear from Jeff. TeacherCast. Jeff Bradley? That doesn't sound right. Jeff, what is Jeff's last name from TeacherCast? Anybody know? Chat room?
No, I can't remember his name. I can see his face.
Yeah, I can see his face. I know it's Jeff. I know he has triplets.
After 50 thing that you do.
.net. Jeff also chimes in on that. So that's he'll be chiming in on that, and we'll probably do another quick mic shootout between this microphone and of course the see, that doesn't work. That's a fun mix of that. So that'll be coming up on this week of the School of Podcasting. Then later in the month, we'll be having an episode about how to connect with your audience. So I think the music's getting bigger. I think we're about done. So stick around for some post show.